Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head down to England once again and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I picked up in my recent order from the House of Trembling Madness down in York. An awesome beer shop if you can get there physically, but they've also got a great web shop these days which the English beer tubers tell me is one of the best value ones you're going to find down there. Great selection of beers and I would highly recommend you check them out if you're interested in English beers. But for this review we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel once before, albeit as part of a collaboration beer that I did with a Scottish brewery, and I think this one should be very interesting. I know these guys have been getting a lot of attention in recent times and their beers seem to be like really quite quirky actually. This is one that I think will make for a very interesting review, and I know that my friends Adam over at Mersey Beer and Peter the Clueless Drinker, both of them have spoken very highly of this brewery, so I'm very interested to do my first dedicated review for them. So for this review then we are going to head down to Salford, very close to Manchester, and we're going to do my first dedicated review for Pomona Island Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called the Uvavu. It comes in at 8% ABV and they're describing this one as a black sour double IPA with raspberry, vanilla and cacao added into the brew. So yeah, really curious to see how this one turns out. The main reason that I got this one was because it was a black sour double IPA. I didn't realise that it had all these different kind of adjuncts and things added into it, but that seems to be one of the kind of signature things when it comes to Pomona Island Brewing Company actually. So yeah, I'll need to try a few more beers from these guys at some stage. But hopefully that's something that I can do with Adam and Peter in person. Maybe do a few out and about videos and things in Manchester and Pomona Island would be one of the places that I'd definitely be interested in hitting up actually. But yeah, make sure you check out Peter and Adam's channels. I'll try to remember to put the links to those in the video description below. Very nice guys and both very knowledgeable about their beers as well. But the last beer that I had from Pomona Island Brewing Company was a collaboration with 71 Brewing from Dundee here in Scotland, and I forget the exact name of it, but it was a Scotch ale that was brewed with like a sour yeast or something like that. It was a really citrusy and kind of sour Scotch ale. It was a really strange and very quirky beer actually, but I think that's exactly how Pomona Island like to do things, and that just makes me very curious to see how this one turns out. Black sour double IPA with, what was it, raspberry, vanilla and cacao added to the brew. This should be really interesting. As you guys know, I love black IPAs, so I'm just very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, let's get on with the review then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Pomona Island Brewing Company before, and you will hopefully see more from these guys in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am at home in the motherland of Scotland for a little while and have access to all these English things. Never a bad thing to have access to the English beers of course, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Pomona Island Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Pomona Island Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Salford near Manchester, and they were founded back in 2017. So the four men behind the brewery are Gareth B, who is formerly of Marble Brewing Company, James Dyer, who used to work for Tempest here in Scotland, and also Nick Greenhall and Ryan Thompson, who founded the Green Lamp Bar together. So the brewery apparently takes its name from a nearby island which can be found just around from Media City, UK, and this is a whole, it seems to be like a kind of area where there's lots of different tech companies setting up and things. It's really quite interesting. The Baltic, I forget what it is it the Baltic Square area in Liverpool? That seems to be another kind of area of a city where that's kind of kicking off, if you like. But it's cool to see tech companies and these little, you know, boutique food companies and stuff like that kicking off in places like this. But this brewery are running a 10 BBL system. They had an on-site tap room where they were selling all of their beers, and a lot of them could actually be found in this Green Lamp Bar as well. But more recently they've been collaborating with the Camden Town Brewery, who are arranging a big project in Salford, and this is called Escape to Free Island, and there's lots of restaurants and food stalls and, you know, various other things in this place. Is like a roller disco and, you know, just loads of stuff. It seems like a really kind of interesting and just random place actually, so I'll need to go and check that out, like I said. But this is where they've now got their main tap room. And this brewery have just been, you know, sitting back and doing some really interesting beers. As I say, they seem to add a lot of adjuncts and things into their beers. They do a lot of different styles, and apparently as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 150 different kinds of beer thus far. So yeah, definitely a brewery to watch from what Peter and Adam tell me, and as I say, they know their stuff. So if you find yourself in Manchester, do take a little trip down to Salford and have a look at these guys. The last beer I had from them, like I say, was very quirky, so I'm curious to see something that is 100% theirs. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Pomona Island Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, although it doesn't actually tell you that much about the guys behind the brewery, in fairness. That's something I do hope they change. But yeah, you can have a look at the stuff on there and you'll learn a little bit about the Escape to Free Island thing that they've got going on, and you can also look at the web shop. The web shop seemed to have a very good selection of all their different beers, and there was a fair, you know, there's a fair whack of styles out of there actually. So I think probably the next review I do from these guys, I would like to be something a little bit more kind of conventional, I guess we should say. Maybe like a, you know, a normal New England IPA or a West Coaster or something like that. But in the meantime, I think this one should be a really interesting introduction to a beer that is a 100% Pomona Island Brewing Companies. So yeah, as I say, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So as I said, this beer I think should be really interesting. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. Uvavu apparently is a word, I googled this before making the video. Apparently this is a word that was chosen by a comedy duo on TV. I can't remember the names now, but apparently they used this word to represent shooting stars, so that's why you've got the shooting star on the front of this. But this word is taken from a TV programme, and as I say, I can't remember. It was just a made up word. It actually, it's not a real word, and I think there's just some kind of obscure reference to TV, to two kind of comedians actually. But yeah, that's it. But this one, as I say, they're describing it as a black sour double IPA, raspberry, vanilla and cacao added into the brew. It says on the back here, welcome to Pomona Island. Should you drink this black sour double IPA with raspberry, vanilla, cacao and milk sugar incorrectly, you'll hear this noise. Nothing. So yeah, exactly. But yeah, barley, oats and wheat in this one, lactose as well, so yeah, not suitable for lactards. Yep, or yes, that's quite a nice little symbol they've got on the back here as well. But there you can see, that is the Pomona Island Brewing Company symbol. 8% ABV this one, and really just curious to see what this one turns out. But yeah, the exact address of this brewery is 33 Weybridge Enterprise Centre, Daniel Adamson Road, Salford. So yeah, let's get this guy out. We'll get on with the tasting. 440ml can, and as I said, purchased from the House of Trembling Madness down in New York. So yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So yeah, this should be very nice. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting beer. Look at the colour of this. It's a very kind of, it's almost like a very just dark coppery colour actually. I think we'll be able to get all of this into the glass, come to think of it. There we are. I'm going to share this beer with my dad afterwards actually. I think this will be really interesting. You can smell some of these fruity characters coming off of it as well. But yeah, black sour IPA. This one, as I say, has oats and wheat in it. So yeah, should be quite interesting. The black IPAs never used to have the oats and wheat in them, as far as I remember. I think that must be a fairly new thing. But I will tell you straight away, if you shine the light through this beer, it's actually like a very dark ruby colour, this one. That's not going to show up so well on the camera, to be honest with you. But maybe you can just see a kind of little red edge to the glass there. But if I shine the light through this, it's a very dark, almost kind of like red wine colour, this beer. But to you guys it will look like a sort of ebony rosewood kind of thing. But yeah, very dark ruby, sort of red wine kind of colour to this one. But yeah, there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head, and the head, as you saw, poured to be about a half finger of a kind of, I would say, sort of slightly pink tinted kind of thing there. That's fading away to just be a very, very sort of thin foamy layer, but yeah, it does look very, very nice. There's one or two, there's just a little thin wispy layer there, but it does have a fair ring just around the kind of edge of the glass there, which is quite interesting. But yeah, it is, say, there is a good degree of haze to this one when you shine the light through it, and that will probably be down to the oats and the wheat that are in this beer. So yeah, this looks very, very nice. This one, it kind of looks as you would expect from a black IPA, to be honest with you, but I did not quite expect that kind of reddish tint that the beer has. It's almost like a mix of, now that I reflect on it, it's a little bit more like a kind of coppery colour. It's the same colour as some of these sour beers, these, like, you know, blackberry, blackcurrant sort of sour beers that you'll find from certain breweries over in Sweden. But yeah, certainly looks like quite an interesting one. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we go on. I think this is going to be pretty damn unusual, to be honest with you. Ooh, but it does smell nice, I'll say that straight away. The aroma straight away is all about the raspberries, absolutely. Yeah. To be honest with you, on the first impression, it's quite hard to detect any element of black IPA in this one, to be honest. The aroma is quite straight shooting. There is a bit of depth to it, in fairness, and maybe it'll just take your nose a little bit of time to kind of just to kind of adjust. But yeah, the aroma out of this one is quite nice, actually. So if you take the aroma of this beer in quite deeply, what you'll smell at the very back of the nose is that it's like a sort of chocolate, it's a chocolate kind of powder sort of thing, a very dry sort of powdery chocolate, and you get that right away out of this beer. But yeah, the aroma coming from this beer, I think, is really quite interesting. It basically just smells like the ingredients they've listed on the front of the can, to be honest with you. So there's a wee bit, as I say, of a kind of dry, powdery chocolate to this one. It's got a little bit of a kind of well-fired, there is a wee touch of a kind of well-fired bread crust in there. You can get a little hint of black malt out of this beer, almost a roasted barley or something like that. So you do get a wee bit of that in there, but it's got a very dry, chocolatey kind of thing too, to be honest with you. But yeah, I do like how this beer goes together. So yeah, the aroma coming out of this one, I think, is very, very nice in a lot of ways. But yeah, it is really just kind of as I would have expected from what it says on the can there. Yeah, raspberry, vanilla and cacao. I don't think the vanilla is quite as obvious as the other two, but yeah, roasty kind of how do you say it, roasty, sort of like roasty kind of powdery chocolate kind of things coming out of this one. And also yeah, just a little bit. It does have a wee bit of a kind of bready backbone to it, in fairness, as well. But yeah, you can smell some of the kind of oaty smoothness to the beer, a little touch of the wheat coming out as well. Just a wee bit of a kind of bready quality in there too. But then yeah, there's a wee tiny hint of like a brown sugar. I do get a wee bit of caramel out of this one, and you can smell some of that vanilla and sort of milk sugar in there. Those two things seem to be kind of going together like that, and then on top of that you've got the raspberries, but the raspberries almost smell kind of like syrup like in a lot of ways. They do have a little bit of a kind of syrupy thing going on, which I very much like. And yeah, there's just a wee bit of tartness to them as well, which there's a wee bit of tartness to them too, which I think is really quite interesting. So yeah, the way that everything goes together in this beer, I think is very, very nice. So yeah, this one does go together really quite well, I think. Yeah, I don't think there's much more we can say about this beer. On the hoppy side of things, it's got a little bit of how would you say, it does have a wee bit of a kind of green side to it. I mean, there is a little bit of earthiness to it. It's got a little bit of kind of floral aromaticity and things, but yeah, there is just a wee touch of hoppy character to it, not a lot, to be quite honest. Yeah, a little bit of a kind of floral aromaticity, a little bit of grassiness in there, and perhaps there's a wee bit of like a blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing on the fruity side. But yeah, just a wee touch of earthiness. I think it might be an American hop, like a little bit of Cascade or, you know, something like that. Maybe could be Eureka, could be an interesting one. Eureka's got some of these really berryish characters. But yeah, not sure what to make of the hoppy side of this beer. It's a very, very quirky aroma, this one, and difficult to sort of pick things out directly, but I'm curious just to see what this beer is like in the flavour profile. So take a bit of time and just mull the aroma over a little bit, as I always say. That's half the experience with craft beer and whiskey and sake and stuff, but we're going to taste this one now and just see how we get on. So this one is the Uvavu. Did I pronounce that right? Yeah, Uvavu. A black, sour, double IPA with raspberry, vanilla and cacao added into the brew, coming in at 8% ABV from Pomona Island Brewing Company in Salford, next to Manchester in England. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, it is. It's one of these beers, when you first take it in, it's actually really strange, but when it mellows out, it works. Sour black IPA. There you go. Yeah, it works. It does work, actually. Yeah. I'm going to say thumbs up to Pomona Island for this one. From my first impression, what I would say is, this isn't a beer that you drink yourself. This is one that you buy a can of for the kind of quirkiness factor and you share. But in fairness, if you live close to this brewery and you're drinking lots of different stuff, probably, you know, probably you would be able to get used, and if they're brewing quirky things like this all the time, you probably would be able to have, you know, like a half pint or something of one of these beers to yourself, I'm sure. But for me, this is a very quirky one. This is definitely one that you have a little go at to see how something works. And I dare say, it could be a style that if it kind of, if it took off, it would start to grow on people. This one, it's got a lovely aftertaste to it. This beer, it's got a whole combination of things going on. It's got a little bit of a black IPA quality to it. It's got a little bit of a milkshake IPA kind of thing going on as well. It's the kind of sour, tart, fruity sort of thing. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes together from that perspective. But I will just say, thumbs up to Pomona Island for this. If this is the kind of thing that they're doing normally and experimenting like this, you have to take your hat off to them for that, for thinking outside of the box. There's so many breweries out there these days that you do have to think outside of the box to make yourself stand out at the moment, to be honest. But yeah. Yeah, these guys, I think, really know what they're doing. Yeah, this if you can pull something crazy like this off, then definitely you've got a bright future ahead of you. Like I say, my next review from these guys, I would want to do something conventional and see how they do the sort of straight up beers. Because this one, it reminds me of some of the random things I've had from Omnipollo back over in Sweden. But yeah, obviously this one I don't think has the flavour essence and all this kind of thing that the Omnipollo beers use, but the kind of quirkiness of the flavour profile reminds me of them, to be honest. But yeah, let's try and break this beer down a little bit and just explain the flavour to you. So yeah, when you take this beer in, then the first thing you're going to be met with is that big wet but juicy raspberry. I mean, it's got a bit of tartness to it and a little bit of kick when you take it in, but then it really juices out quite nicely. So remember, if you've watched the channel before, you'll know that the thing I always look for in sour beers is that the way that the impact that the beer has, and how it just transitions from being really kind of sharp to being a little bit smoother and kind of juicy in a sense. So yeah, that's what I really look for in these. That's what I look for in these kind of more sour beers, if you like. And this one's got a really nice way of dealing with that. But yeah, underneath, well, we'll start off with the malt base then, and we'll come back to the sour side of the beer later. But I mean, with this beer, straight away you can feel the backbone of this beer is actually quite smooth. You can feel, I think that what's happening is, you've got a little bit of a kind of, maybe I wouldn't say carafa, to be honest with you, I don't know about that, but it's got, there's a few things it could be. Special B, black malt, roasted barley, something like that. You've got a little bit of that, and you do feel the kind of dryness of that the further you go into the into the aftertaste. But I think the cocoa powder really smoothens that out, and then of course you've got the lactose sugar kind of sitting on top of that. So in the middle of your palate and into the back third of the palate, in fairness as well, you can feel a little bit of a slightly, some kind of more roasty toasty type malt just blanketing the tongue. But on top of that, as I say, you've got the cocoa sugar and the lactose milk sugar in this one there, and that just smooths the whole base of the beer out, but you get a wee bit more dryness out of it the further you go into the aftertaste. In the middle third of your palate, you can feel there is a wee bit of a slightly kind of smoother, almost creamy, oaty character to the beer, and I think the oats really help some of the sweeter side of the chocolate just push their way out, and that progresses the further you go into the aftertaste. As you go into the back third of your palate, there's a little bit of a more kind of thick bready character to it. I think that's the wheat maybe just thickening the beer up a little bit, and you do get one or two little roasty toasty elements on that very back part of your palate, but the chocolate kind of sitting on top of that, the cocoa sort of thing, is really very nice actually. So that gets a thumbs up from me in this beer, I have to say. So yeah. But yeah, I really like how this one, I do like how this one kind of pieces itself together, to be honest with you. It's a very, very quirky beer in this sense. You get more and more sweetness out of this beer, particularly in the centre of the palate. You get that dry, powdery chocolate kind of thing just pushing its way out underneath the oats in this beer, and then it gets a wee bit sweeter the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, I really like how this one goes together in that sense too. But yeah, it has a wee bit of, you do get a little bit of dryness on that borderline between the middle third and the back third of your palate. There's a wee bit of dryness there. Some of the chocolate comes out, but it's almost just like a little bit of a kind of toasty bread crust kind of thing there too, which is interesting. So yeah, I think that describes the malt base fairly well in this one. You might get one or two little undertones of a slightly woody flavour coming out of the beer, but overall it is just kind of very, very quirky. Yeah. I think that pretty much sums up the malty side of this beer, to be quite honest with you. The oaty notes, I don't think you get too much vanilla in this beer. On that front half of that middle third of your tongue, as I say, the oats come out. You get some of the oats in that middle third of your palate, and towards the front half of that middle third of your tongue, that's when you get a wee bit of the vanilla just coming out of the beer. But on the back corners of your palate, to move to the hoppy side of things, there is a wee touch of earthiness there, and as you move further forward, it does get a little bit more, how would you say, it does have a wee bit of an almost herbal quality. Then as you move just further forward on the front, towards the front corners of the palate, it does develop just a little bit of a slightly floral kind of thing. But in some ways it feels like there might not be hops in this, but I think that would be very unusual for a black IPA, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm unsure. I mean, I think there is a little bit of hop in this one, but not a lot. Not a lot, to be honest with you. This beer doesn't have a lot of hoppy bitterness to it, but then again, that's the way that IPAs have gone these days. Round the front curve of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a sort of lighter. You've got a little bit of a lighter kind of grassiness in there as well, but then the fruit really starts to kind of take over this one. So the fruitiness in this beer is quite different. As I was saying earlier, when you take this beer in, you get that impact from the sharp raspberries, and they come in right on the kind of tip of the tongue and just roll further back. It just rolls back, and the beer gets a little bit of a kind of oily, juicy raspberry kind of thing there. And the tartness actually lingers. The sourness lingers into the aftertaste with this beer. But the other thing that happens is if you add fruits into the beer as an adjunct, what happens is they suppress a little bit of the green side of the hops, so maybe that is suppressing a bit of the kind of grassy side of the beer as well. You can feel the raspberries just kind of going around the front edge of your tongue and spreading back a little bit. But on the front third of your palate, as I always say, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And for me, the fruity side of this beer, I'd love to know what hop they've used in this, or what hops maybe. So it could be, there is something that's telling me there might be a little bit of Cascade in here, because it does have, that fruity side of the beer does have a little bit of a a kind of slightly soft figgy quality to it. It could be a bit of Williamette, which can give you these things, a little bit of Eureka perhaps. As an outside bet, you've also got Northern Brewer from Germany, popular in Doppelbox. You've also got Bramlin's Cross, which is popular in the English barley wines. Those could also be outside bets. Simcoe might be an interesting one as well, because Simcoe, if you put it in a dark malt base like this, can give you some of these red fruity sort of things. So Simcoe might be a shout with this one actually. There's a few things, now that I've said Simcoe, I really am wondering about it, because it does, some of the juicy notes you get out of this beer do remind me of other beers I've had, other black IPAs and things where Simcoe has been the hop. But yeah, at the back of that front third of your palate, if you go to that border region between middle third and front third of your palate, it's got a little bit of a kind of, you do get a bit of that dryness in there, a bit of that well-fired bread crusty sort of thing, but as you move further forward from that, you get a wee bit of a kind of plummy, raisiny sharpness there. Then as you gradually make your way forward on that front third of your palate, it's definitely more figgy, and then on the front part of it, the front sort of 6th of your tongue, 9th of your tongue, whatever, but towards the front of that front third of your tongue, you'll get a bit of blackcurrant, and then the further you go into the aftertaste, you can feel a wee bit of, you know, a more oily blackberry quality to it. And but overarching everything there is the raspberry. The raspberry adjunct. That really kind of makes these other fruits just seem a little bit more kind of like subtleties, to be quite honest with you. I think that's a fair way to describe this one. But as I say, further you go into the aftertaste, the raspberry tartness lingers there. Some of the more oily fruits from the hops, from the esters from the hops in this one, the kind of sort of dry bread crusty thing, cocoa sugar, the milk sugar, the lactose I should say, and the oats, they kind of linger there. So this beer, it's got a lovely aftertaste to it, but like I say, this is one that I would kind of class this as a beer you try for the quirkiness factor, to be honest with you. I think it does work, and I do wonder, could the style grow on me a little bit? But this is a sort of kind of experimental beer you try to see if it works. But then again, people have said that about other styles now that are very popular, so I'm not sure exactly what to make of this one. But if you were thinking about buying a can of this one, I would say take it to a share with your friends and, you know, try it together. I think it's a really quite quirky beer, this one, but they've done, from what I understand, they've done a lot of quirky beers, and these guys do like sour IPAs. That sour Scotch ale I had from them before was quite an interesting one. It wasn't what I expected, and it did kind of work as well. Like, that's the thing with Pomona Island, they will try random stuff and usually it seems to work, and that's certainly the case with this beer, so thumbs up to them. In terms of the mouthfeel then, let's round off this review. So I would describe this beer as being, you know, mid-bodied. It feels like it's right in the centre of the spectrum. The carbonation does have a wee bit of crispness for me, and it's quite a wet mouthfeel overall. I don't find this one slick. I do find this one it feels like quite clean and quite wet in a lot of ways. In terms of bitterness, I don't find a lot of bitterness to this beer. Maybe a little bit of bitterness to the kind of cocoa chocolatey kind of thing that's going on with this beer, and it does build in dryness a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, but there's a bit of sweetness in here. There's a bit of a kind of oaty quality to it as well. I think the oats give you just a little bit of smooth and creaminess, and you do get a wee bit of sweetness building in the middle of the palate there too, which is good. But yeah, it does have a wee bit of a kind of dryness to it. So it feels like a very smooth black IPA in a lot of ways. But on the fruity side of things, as I said, when you take this beer in, you've got a real bit of raspberry tartness to it, but it juices up quite nicely and becomes almost more like a kind of ice cream sauce. It's a little bit like that. But then you've also just got some of those more juicy, oily fruits in there too. But I think all in all, a very, very quirky beer, this one. It gives you what it says on the can. And that's kind of how I would round it off, if you like. So I like this one, and I'm curious to see what my dad thinks of it as well, actually. But I do like this beer. This is quite an interesting experimental beer, and it does make me curious to try a few of their other sort of concoctions, if you like. But well done to Pomona Island Brewing Company for this one. This is a very quirky beer, and I've enjoyed reviewing it for you, so I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. Maybe a bit of a ramble this review just because of how unusual the beer is, actually, but yeah, let's leave it there. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pomona Island Brewing Company as well. We will return to these guys at some point fairly soon, I'm sure, but in the meantime, this has been a very interesting one to review, and I hope you've enjoyed it. The Uvavu Black Sour Double IPA with raspberry, vanilla and lactose, raspberry vanilla lactose, and cacao added into the brew. Nearly forgot that there. But yeah, check these guys out, check out my social media, let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Make sure you check out Pomona Island Brewing Company, along with my friends Peter the Clueless Drinker and Adam at Bearsy Beers. Until the next time, slange it, skull, cheers, and catch you guys very, very soon.